Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at the many facets of work that is happening at the Department of Children and Families, between our staff, the families we serve, and our community partners. My name is Jaqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for almost 30 years. And although I may be familiar with many of the topics we bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help us dispel the myths and misconceptions that can often be barriers to our work. Join us as we open our doors and invite you to have a seat at our table. Gwen, thank you so much for being a guest on Doors to Hope and Healing today. It's a pleasure to have you. Having you on our show today is going to give viewers insight about the importance of having healthy adults in our lives so that we can have our youths be successful as they go through all of life's situations. I know that your first involvement with the Department of Children and Families was many years ago when we were the Department of Children and Youth Services.
Yes.
That was the name when I started with the agency many years ago. Can you tell our viewers how you became involved in the foster care system?
Sure. I was actually taken by the department when I was born. My mom was a very young mother. She had two children prior to myself. One was my sister Paula. She's 3.5 years older than I am. I had a sister, Gwen, or her name was Star. She would have been 2 years older than I was. And unfortunately, she died of asphyxiation. So the state said that my mom was not allowed to have any more children. And at that time, unfortunately, she got pregnant. And upon having me, I was taken away at birth.
So that's how you went into a foster home.
That's how I got to the
time.
system, yes.
So were you separated from your siblings at that time as well?
I was. I did not know I even had siblings until I was in my 30s.
Wow.
So that was a surprise. Yeah, I was shocked. It didn't even occur to me that I would have had siblings or, so that was a turning point in life for me as well. So absolutely. I wish I had known.
So talk about those experiences in foster care, from what your earliest memories were.
My first foster family was the Braxtons, and I think they were living down in New London. I believe they had me from when I was born till about 3 years old. At that point, a family was trying to or put in information to adopt me. So I went to an orphanage where I stayed there for about 1.5 years. I had regular visits from my new adoptive parents, which were the Willeys. And I was with them for about 10, maybe 11 years. Unfortunately, that adoption did not last. And I ended up being institutionalized for about maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, and then went back into the foster care system to another foster home, which was Olga Unita Thompson in Hartford after that.
After you left
the Institute.
So when you were in the Institute, I can imagine you were a teenager and you had probably at that time been with adults as well that were having psychiatric issues, and you yourself will question whether or not you had psychiatric issues when you were placed there. But it was a safe place for you that the adoptive family left you, and you probably saw and experienced more than many teenagers experience in a lifetime when you were there.
Absolutely. I think when I'm thinking back to the time that I spent there, I was there, I want to say it had to been about the mid-'80s. And at that time, young adults and adults were housed together. There was no separation. So I think, I met death there for the first time. I saw addiction there for the first time, and violence up close. And then in my tenure there, eventually they opened up the Todd units, which were for young adults and children. So they finally separated the youth from the adults at the Institute. So, it was definitely a situation where I had an opportunity to kind of grow up faster than I probably should have, right? It was definitely very stressing, and definitely a feeling of abandonment again in the system. I think that's what most foster children kind of live through, is that starting over feeling from house to house or family to family, and then to be almost in a situation where you become institutionalized, right?
You do, and you felt that obviously you were a baby when you came into care, but then you also experienced that from a disrupted adoption. We don't have to go into a lot of detail, but when you were at the Institute of Living, was there any closure with that family? How did you transition on to your next step in life, your next chapter?
There wasn't any closure. I think the family might have visited me once or twice. I do distinctly remember them coming to the hospital. At that time, I was already in the Todd units, and they wanted to let me know that they realized then that they never really loved me and they had made a mistake. And I think that always stuck with me, right? As it would stick with anyone. You kind of realize that your life is only as valuable as the experiences that you have within it. And I think those few years in such a dark place will always be a memory or an inspiration for me to strive very hard to be successful in life, right? Like, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And I think that, when we talked before the show about what's your purpose today and, what messaging do we want to share with our viewers? And I think it's important to share that, everybody deserves to have somebody in their life that is there with them for every chapter, even if it's resources or social workers or adults in your family that are with you, everyone deserves that. So I know that when we had spoken, and I've had the pleasure of meeting you many times before the show today, you talked about there was a nurse there and they began to advocate for you to leave the Institute and to be placed with a family. You deserved a family and that you didn't have these psychiatric issues that initially brought you to this placement. Tell us about that nurse.
Sure. Her name was Oksana. And again, my memories isn't what it used to be. I'm in my mid-50s, but again, some names you don't ever forget. It was Oksana and it was Dr. Dwenger. And I remember their names, never written them down. And they kept saying to me, we have someone very special here. And the situation with me was I wouldn't get out because I had no one to sign me out. And I was under the age of 18 and couldn't leave, right? Not voluntarily. I wasn't an adult. So what they were saying to me is you'll be here until you turn 18 and maybe even longer because there's nowhere to send you. So I kind of got lost in the system. And they advocated for me. They made phone calls and somehow they got back to the state of Connecticut and they're like, listen, we've got a child who's just been abandoned here, right? There's nothing else she can gain from our services. She seems like she's very intelligent. Obviously, there were some probably disruptions in the home, but we don't necessarily think it would have warranted where she ended up. So it took them a while. It didn't happen instantaneously, right? But eventually they got the right person and they were able to kind of say to myself, in 6 months, we'll be able to get you out. And I remember leaving the Institute. I hadn't been in a car in so long. I remember getting like car sick. I couldn't even believe I was leaving. Like, you don't realize that when you're in that type of controlled environment, that like everything was on property. And again, back then, the Institute has a great reputation. It's one of the best hospitals in the country as far as, I think it was for alcoholism. Some of the celebrities went there. But everything's on site. Like a dentist appointment was in the basement. Everything was connected to the Harvard Hospital, which was also a part of it. So you never really got to leave, right? So it was definitely those two people, I want to say they might have saved my life.
I believe that they have. And I think it's important to share when you first went into the Institute, tell us a little bit about what your life was like when you were living with your adoptive family. You were pretty smart and bright and successful and social and those natural teen activities that you were doing.
As a youth, I was active in my church youth group. I was a varsity cheerleader in high school. I was in the color guard. I played percussion for our band. I studied at Hart School of Music. I went to camp every summer. I was leader in training at Camp Jewel. I mean, you would never think that something like this could happen to someone like me. It was like one day I was there and then one day I was gone. And I think someone equated it to being almost like I was buried alive. It was like in one day I vanished and then no one ever came looking for me. And it just stays with you that can happen. If it happened to me, it could be happening to someone else right now. And it's scary.
It is scary. You just gave me chills with that story. And, as I'm listening to your story and having been familiar with it before today, I feel so grateful that our system has improved, the child welfare system over the course of all of these years. So we're talking probably in the early 70s to where we are now. There have been vast improvements in permanency planning and the supports and the resources. So I would hope that no child would ever have to go through what you went through. But I think that the importance of having you on today is to let our viewers know, anybody thinking about being a resource for one of our children, that we need people to step forward and not be afraid of our teenagers and understand the value of being a resource for a child who needs you. Teenage years are difficult for a child that's in their birth family with limited issues of abuse or no abuse or neglect, let alone a child who is really facing all of those challenges. So you leave the Institute of Living and you are placed into a foster home in Hartford County?
Yes. And I was there for, I think it was my senior year. I had requested to go back to my original high school. because I knew I had friends there and I was eager to get back. And unfortunately, I don't know how they did it, but the school system said I was banned from returning to public schools there. So then I ended up going to a school in Hartford, and I finished, I graduated and I kind of decided to go to college. I went to UConn. I did 2 years and I decided that wasn't the best thing for me at the time. I did not want to stay in my foster care situation. I wanted to kind of age out. And again, talking about the improvements of DCF, I mean, I was the black bag generation. And then we hear horror stories of that, like your
garbage bags?
Yeah, so all your stuff's in a garbage bag. You kind of age out of the system. Your foster family's already repurposed your bed, right? Like it's almost like, thank you for your services. You're kind of pushed away. And, just trying to navigate life. And like you said, it's just having people that can be in your life for a lifetime makes all the difference. And I was very fortunate. I had a best friend, Angela Miller, and I kind of adopted her family, right? Like I liked everything about them, right? Their moralities, just how they lived, the mom, the dad situation, the children, the dog, the whole thing. And I kind of bought into it. And I kind of say that I wouldn't leave, right? I didn't actually physically live with them, but they gave me something to work towards. And I watched their work ethic and I said, I can obtain anything, but I can't do it alone, right? So meeting different people throughout life, I've had a lot of mentors and, and I know how to raise my hand. I know what I'm capable of doing. And I just had to take the time and opportunity to say, with people like even like our chance meeting, right? Like you meet people and it just takes just that interaction to change lives for so many. And I always said, if I became of means, I would adopt, I would foster, I would do respite, and I've done all of it, right? I did respite for years. Deanna, my oldest daughter, I got her at 16 years old. It was a rocky ship, and I don't want to minimize that at all. It was rocky, but it was worth every moment of it, right? And then my youngest daughter, Amaya, I got her when she was 3. And I would say it was easier when she was younger, but the teenage years are teenage years. And I think that's something, if I could talk to foster parents or potential foster parents, I would say to them, you're never going to love someone enough to avoid conflict, right? Because love in itself is conflict to some degree.
It is.
The love part is how you deal with it and how you succeed. And I think once people understand that, it makes it a little bit easier, because if I think back to all the times I wanted to pull my hair out, right, with my daughters, it was just like daily. And I told my youngest daughter, she saw me go through with her older sister. She goes, well, I'm never going to be like that, Mommy. And I said, no, you're going to be worse, right? And she was like, I won't be. And I said, yes, you will. And it was. You get to around 16 years old, 15, and you go from being Mommy and Daddy's best friend to kind of coming into your own. And that's a growing pain. And that doesn't even include the rockiness of being a foster child who might have had 10 or 15 placements before your home, who have heard several times over and over, you'll be here forever, right? It's sort of like, that disappointment is always in the back of your mind. Like they say, I'm going to be here. This is my last placement until the next placement. So it's important that people make that commitment, and not just until they turn 18, but for life. A lot of the questions that many children face, the hard choices that have to be made come after you turn 18, right? It's a life journey.
It sure
and they're
is.
going to need your wisdom, your patience, your intuition, your love to get through some of those situations, and they will come.
Do you feel that you pulled strength during those times in raising your daughters because you wanted to be that person that you didn't have at those moments?
When I think when people use the term, love unconditionally, I am definitely one of those people, right? And I said, I remember when they placed my daughter with me, they're like, this is going to be tough for you. And I'll share a small story. My daughter had a problem with taking things, always in trouble. And I was like, it can't be that bad. Until I used to have to take showers and sprinkle baby powder from my bedroom to the bathroom so I could see footprints going in and out of my room, because things would just disappear. And you don't realize it.
Smart.
But I had to do that because you don't realize that sometimes these things happen. But it didn't change my love for my daughter. It just made me set up new boundaries to keep her in my life, right? And it wasn't until she was grown up, she was like, you know what, Mom, I love you. But I earned it. No matter what we went through, I was still her mom.
You didn't give up on her.
I never gave up, no matter how bad it got. I was there for court appearances. I was there for potential school expulsion. And we went through everything. And like I said, sometimes you have to just take the time. I think some people think you can just pick a child up and then just gonna love you. And they don't think about the damage, right? They don't think about all the disappointment that child's had to endure and how they build that wall so high and so thick that it's gonna take you maybe 5 times that amount of time to get through it, because all they're trying to do is save themselves.
And that was you. You're explaining, yourself at that age. You were building those walls because you were abandoned and you didn't have that person in your life. Where do you think you pulled the patience and being able to develop that unconditional love? Do you feel like it's just in you, or because of your experiences?
I think it's partially in me, but then again, I have to give again, the Millers were a great family, and they really kind of gave me everything that I really wanted, as far as being able to say that I can do this. I can do anything. And that's what these children in care need to understand as well. Like, when you get the right foster family and that right connection and the right caseworker, it's like, it's not the sky's the limit. There is no limit. Everything is doable, but it's communication, it's effort, it's patience, and love will come.
And that's happened to you with your daughters.
Yes.
So what is your, we have viewers that are watching and they're thinking, I don't think I could do it, or what message would you send to our viewers about the need right now? I know we've talked about this, so often about what our teens need to be successful as they are going through these chapters of the foster care program. What messaging would you give?
I think it's important to understand that these children need a home, but more importantly, they need a family. And I think sometimes that terminology gets confusing for people. And what I mean by that is, when you open your home to a child, it's about saying that you're willing to make the commitment to help them charter life. And it's not just for a specific amount of time or period of time, it's for the rest of their lives. And it's rewarding, it's satisfying, it's everything you could ever want. But you're going to have to put the work in for it. No different than maybe making a weight loss change, right? Like, you want to say, what could make life better for myself and for someone else? And it's simple. Sometimes it's a child. It's being able to bring someone in your house and teach them your ways and your recipes and your habits and your hobbies. And it's just rewarding, right? Take the time and make that effort. It's important.
I know that you have an impressive resume and you're very successful in the financial world. You're a vice president in a financial institution, and you understand the importance of managing money and for these kids to develop that understanding of those just common life skills. Talk to us a little bit about why you feel that's so important.
I mean, I think financial literacy is very important in life. I think not just for children, but even for adults. And, people don't normally realize that you get that, you learn that from your parents, from whoever your parental figures are in your life. And without that, I mean, it makes life very hard to navigate, right? Being able to pay bills on time, whether it's credit card or rent, or, being able to set up appointments, or being able to save money for the future purchases, or just saving money in general for savings, for retirement. And those things that you want to discuss with children very young in life, because it's so easy to squander money. I mean, us as adults, I think sometimes we kind of have to rob Peter to pay Paul, because life happens, right? But we all have skills that make it easier for us. So when having the opportunity to speak with children about financial literacy and being able to save for a rainy day and really mean that. Because unfortunately now we have struggles that don't just encompass conversation, but the internet, right?
Yes.
It makes children want things that are outside of their financial reach, but wanting to obtain it or working to get an item opposed to financial stability. So that's an important lesson that we try to teach children young.
Well, yeah, they're virtually seeing everything on the internet. You had the opportunity to talk to our youth that are involved in our youth advisory board, and you were able to share with them your life story that was extremely inspiring for them to see where you had been and where you are now, and the way that you continue to give back to our youth. If you can, before we close our segment today, if you can just share with our viewers, I have the Olive Branch. The Department of Children and Families has a shop where we have free items for our families to come and shop, for free, to have alleviate those burdens around the holiday time or special occasions. And you have been an incredible resource for us at the Olive Branch by getting donations from the community of smart TVs and laptops and advocating for these kids to have things, not to have things because it's this expensive possession, but things that are really helping them to become more successful in their college careers or through learning and developing life and life skills. Why have you done that for us?
I think that when we think about toy drives, so many companies and different businesses all have toy drives, but one of the things I think we kind of focus on is, young adults, right, in care. And, we want these children to feel the same as any other child. Mm-hmm. And because of the expense, right, of some of the larger toys, I find myself in a situation where I can, put out a message to my peers and say, listen, this is what we need. We want laptops. We want, flat screen TVs. We want, game stations if possible. And these things are to help these children kind of have the same kind of life that any child would have. Mm-hmm. And it's really that simple. I think, like I said, I've been doing it for a couple of years now.
Yes,
and my goal is 500 toys per year. Obviously, on the higher end, I want to always stay towards 12 and above for you. Mm-hmm. And I said because it's easy to round up small toys, right? Mm-hmm. Younger kids' toys are always easy to obtain. Yes. But it's going to take a group of us to come together and say, listen, this is what we want. We want laptops for children going to college so they have these things. So they don't have to go to the library or public services to get the papers done or turn in assignments. There's no more typewriters, right? That's not how this thing's done anymore. No. Technology has advanced. So we want to make sure that these kids have all this. And it can't always fall on the state to provide. Mm-hmm. If we are of means, we should give back. And that's how I feel about life. I try to give as much as I can of my time, money, items, and you always can call me if there's a child in need, and I will definitely see what I can do to aid in any way that I can. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important that even if you're thinking about fostering or adopting or even donating to a charity where it directly affects these children, speak to someone. Mm-hmm. There's so many people that can talk to you about the programs and the children, and maybe it's about a more granular conversation about the age of child that will work best for your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a younger child, but then it means more care, maybe sick time, where an older child might have a little bit more baggage, as we all do as we get older. But there's a match for everyone, and it's something that we need to think about. So I hope that they do it.
Thank you. On behalf of the Department of Children and Families, I am so grateful that our paths have crossed, and your lived experience and sharing that and what you've done for the children that you've adopted and what you continue to do for our youth is truly inspirational. And I hope that everyone watching feels inspired by what you've done and the life that you had and where you are now and just how beautiful you are inside and out. So thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you for having me.
If any of our viewers watching Doors to Hope and Healing today are interested in being a foster or adoptive parent, please call 1-888-KID-HERO. Thank you for watching.
The water's warm at Jaws Pond, and we're stocked full of treasures. Big or small, we buy it all. We buy and sell fast rides, power tools, vintage guitars, and so much more. Walk the plank in style with our fine jewelry, diamonds, and watches. Plus, we have a huge selection of the latest video games, including the new PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Jaws Pond, conveniently located on Meriden Waterbury Turnpike in Southington and West Main Street in New Britain.
Follow us on Instagram at nutmeg.tv.